i.B.Artin. Tell him i.B.Artin. Yeah. i.B.Artin.
What's up?
Back, everybody. Hello.
Yes, welcome back to the i.B.Artin podcast.
Yes, episode
2 of our brand new season. It's your favorite hosts, Kira and Mars. I guess just hopping right into things.
Yeah.
We have a special guest on
Very
with us
special
today.
guest.
And we cannot wait to introduce him. We love this guy so much. But before we do that, shout out to our new podcast intro.
Right.
If you don't know, then I guess you saw it before you turned on this episode. But go back. If you haven't watched on YouTube, go back to the first episode or this episode, and you will see that we have a brand new intro. Shout out to my sister. And
It eats.
it eats, y'all. She made that on her own with her
Oh my
producer Daniel. So yeah, shout out to her. Just ate
it's so
down.
good.
It's so good.
And it's us.
It's us.
We're
We're not copyright
at all.
infringing
Like-
on who made the OG song.
Just the two of us.
Just the
Listen,
two
I
of
can't
us.
think of his name right now. Thank you so much.
Right. Don't
it was
sue us.
right. We will not be using the first season for monetary purposes.
And won't.
Yeah, no, not that we're using this one for monetary purposes either. At
One
this
day.
point. Right?
Yeah.
But
One
it'll
day.
be-
Education's protected by copyright.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Don't quote me. Don't quote me.
Pulls up copyright law immediately.
But also going off of that, this presently anonymous voice is our very special guest.
Is our guest. Ooh.
So today we have our friend with us, Zhang. Okay, so if you could just introduce yourself. Who are you? Like, what's your medium, your discipline? Like, tell us a bit about you.
Hello.
Who are you?
Yeah, who am I? I'm an enigma. I'm mystery. No. Hi guys. I'm Leo. I am good friends with Maz and Kira. We're in the same program together, but while they focus on performing arts, I'm more of a visual artist.
Trainer.
Yeah. Yeah, one could argue, but
Hollering.
So I went to the University of Virginia. I studied global commerce there and doubled in studio art with like a concentration in new media. So video-based work, like, I don't know, like in visual arts, like I don't really like it when people kind of like define themselves by one medium, because I think people work like interdisciplinary like practices. But yeah, so I'm from Windhoek, Namibia. I like came here for school, and now I'm studying arts administration, and I've worked in like several art spaces, like from commercial galleries to smaller like nonprofit galleries. I was a practicing artist. Like I still feel like I do that sometimes, but it's definitely not like my main line of work.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the practicing artist side of things, like our last episode, we were just talking about how it's hard for us to, like, me dance sometimes, and then like Mars, she's like, anytime I pick up the violin, I just want to
like literally cry.
Yeah, like, and so I guess we're all kind of in that same boat, and I guess that's why we're getting another degree in arts administration.
Right.
I recently bought like this pack of like kind of they weren't like super expensive, but they were like a little pricey like color pencils. They have not been opened. I bought them like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, I'll find time eventually, you know.
Collecting dust. No, that's so real. I recently bought some jazz shoes because I was like, oh, I'll need them because I'm gonna audition, because I have like the spur of the moment things. Baby, they in a closet, boxed up still. I'm like,
literally me with the guitar strap that I bought last year.
Oh my
The last time I touched my guitar was about 1.5 years ago.
wasting
You'll get
money
to it
at this
next
point,
week.
all
Yeah.
of us, right?
Yeah.
Keeps putting it off.
And it's a cute guitar strap, mind you, but
You'll have to bring it out.
she's in a bag
Bring it to class.
right.
in Maryland,
Oh, okay.
where my
Okay.
guitars are also at.
Got it.
It's
Got
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So just before we like dive deep into the conversation, because literally we're just gonna pick your brain about visual arts and your experiences in education, but just to give a little background about what this season is about, and Mars can add whatever you want to after. But essentially, this topic of this season is all about education. Last season, we explored the experiences of people of color. Also, are you a person of color?
You guys can
You
take
gotta
a
mention
wild
that.
guess. Yeah.
You gotta mention that.
Yeah, my parents are well, I'm a first generation Chinese immigrant living in Namibia. I was like born and raised there, but my parents immigrated in 1996. Yeah, like pretty far. Pretty long ago. Like they moved when they were like 25, which is like
our age.
Wow.
I will be
Yeah.
I will be 25 in 3 weeks.
Oh my god, frontal lobe developed.
yeah.
Listen, it's there. I feel it.
No, I keep like thinking, I'm like, damn, you guys moved like to a country like didn't really know that language, just recently gained independence, like it suffered from like apartheid, you
Yeah,
know?
oh
So,
my gosh.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, they're real ones though. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, we definitely want to get more into all that. But that all kind of falls under like education and like why we want to have these conversations. Back to what I was saying. Last season was about experiences and exploring the individual experiences that one may encounter as a person of color in the arts. And now this season is all about like education and whether it's like what does arts education look like within like school systems, what are our personal experiences, and dealing with arts education, because all of us are studied art in some kind of medium within school systems in the US and in Namibia.
Yeah.
Why did I say Namibia?
It's like
Namibia.
there's this interview, I think it's like Jimmy Fallon or something is like interviewing like the Adam Levine. That's like the Maroon 5 person, right?
Yeah. He's like the lead singer.
Yeah, his wife is from Namibia, like Bahasi. Like she's from a town that's like a little bit south of mine.
Yeah.
And there's like this interview of like Jimmy Fallon trying to pronounce it, and he keeps on going like Namibia. Like
What?
I don't,
Good
yeah,
grief.
it was, but that was like years ago. I just remember it like circulated on like my like math teachers like Facebook.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Well,
Well,
I saw that.
Namibia. I'm gonna get it right. But yeah, this season's all about education and and part of that is also being educated on different,
Yeah.
people's experiences, and how one's identity, can intersect with our education and how we perceive certain things in the classroom or whatever. So, before we get into, grilling you and all that stuff.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Mars, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah.
Or you can start us off also with the questions.
Hollering. I guess we'll also do that. But also like kind of looking at where your experiences have kind of overlapped, like your experiences tied in with your identity have overlapped with like even our experiences. And kind of like still continuing to foster that community that, those of us that are, people of color in the arts, like where is that community? Where can we actually find community where we maybe don't think we can or haven't made space for? So definitely highlighting that portion. And I think that's a kind of like a big part of like the podcast itself, but also kind of like our friendships that we've made even in the program, is creating like our own community in places we maybe didn't expect to.
Yeah.
So super excited to, hear
Have you on.
experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
And with that said,
Let's get into it.
So, like we said, we know that there's a lot that intersects with like one's experience and with being where you're from and also like your discipline. Like, how has that been? What have like some key moments, likes, dislikes been?
So you're asking like what has like my experience with like education and like my discipline been? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I guess it's like I didn't really realize that I was gonna go into the arts until maybe like my third year of like college. I think I've like always been fascinated with working in something creative, but being from Namibia, like we don't really have that big of like an arts world like that. Like for context, like we're larger than the size of Texas. Like I know kids from Texas. But yeah, I mean, but we only have like 2.5 million people, and like for context, like Miami has like more than double the people in like the entire country of Namibia does. So it's like it's every, I think, like cultural like subculture like exists like in like a very small like bubble. And it was like there were very few places, I think, for people to practice like arts, at least like in a more professional way. I think a lot of people were like hobbyists, or like if they did practice like arts, like they probably were white. And like, I mean, like in my city, Windhoek, like we have this place that's kind of like a hub for a lot of arts education, and it was called like College of the Arts. But I think like up until like the 90s or like maybe like the 80s, it used to be like an art school just for white people. And that still sort of like remains like the hub for like arts education. Like I took piano classes over there. Like I know people who took like drawing classes as well. But yeah, it wasn't something that I think like was necessarily like encouraged. I was in my primary school church choir. I was a soloist. Yeah.
So you're gonna bring out the vocal?
Right.
No, I actually got kicked out when my voice broke. Like I remember I was singing in the back.
What do you mean your voice broke?
Yeah, because I was
Like
like
puberty.
13. Yeah, I was going through puberty.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That
does
My
happen.
brain was like,
That
oh,
does
it broke.
happen.
Like,
Yeah. No, I pulled an aerial. Like
Hollering. I can't
no, but
speak.
yeah, I just remember like I was in the back of my I was standing in the back row. I was like a soprano, and clearly like my voice broke, and the conductor, like her name is like Miss Amaral. Shout out. I just remember she stopped and she was like, "Who is that?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, honestly."
and they kicked you out?
Well, it was mostly like they like kind of like pressured me to leave.
That's worse.
Yeah, it's crazy because like we had like gone on tour and stuff. Like we like went to South Africa a few times, but I mean, yeah, there's definitely like there's outlets, but I think it's like it is kind of hard for people to think of arts as like a way to practice like things like a little bit more professionally. You know, I mean, even going to grad school, I wrote my application on the basis of so my school was downtown. I went to a private like Anglican school. A private school is not like as expensive in Namibia as it is like in the US. Like, let me just point that out there. But we were directly across from like the National Gallery, and I just remember like we would go there for like our art classes. Like we were required to take art like in primary school, but I don't know. I mean, like you still feel the effects of colonialism in just like, you know, what is supposed to be like our National Gallery. It's like I feel like things have changed now. I mean, a few of my friends have like you know, have had shows in the National Gallery, but at least from what I remember growing up, there was a lot of like primitivism. There was a lot of like differentiating between like traditional Namibian art and classifying it as that versus like, you know, contemporary art or like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that was necessarily like practiced like that. But yeah, and then I moved. In 2016, I went to a boarding school in Florida in Boca Raton or Coconut Creek. Actually, it was kind of like a performing arts school.
Okay,
like
performing
yeah,
arts.
I know.
We love to hear.
Leo secretly loves performing arts. more
I
than
do.
the
I'm
rest.
actually I'm a secret like a musical like Broadway fan.
we love.
Yeah, like
We
I
love
I do really enjoy going to like Broadway shows.
It's
but
fun.
Okay.
It is, yeah. I saw Moulin Rouge for the first time. And
How was it?
I didn't know it was a jukebox musical, and when
Yeah.
they pulled out like Diamonds by Rihanna,
You were
I
like,
was like, yeah, I was like, what is going on? Yeah, but the school I went to in Florida, it was actually the same school that Ariana Grande went to.
Okay.
And,
Nuts.
before she like joined Victoria, so like we did kind of have like a big like performing arts like program, and I kind of chose to do like film, so I'd like help out like filming like our like plays and stuff like that, and I kind of got into like filmmaking as a medium over there. Like I filmed a documentary of like my friend who is like an opera singer, and yeah, I think she used the documentary to apply to USC and like got into the program.
oh wow.
Love that for them.
Yeah,
Cheers.
she's an amazing opera singer. But yeah, it was like it was really special to kind of like be in an environment in which like art was a little bit more like appreciated. Like we had like 2 opera singers like in the entire school, and we put on like a whole opera production. And yeah, it was really exciting to see, and I got to film like a lot of it. And then when I went to college at the good old University of Virginia, I arrived as a business major.
I don't think I ever knew that.
Right, same.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was studying like business and econ, and just realized like I completely hated it. You know, I didn't really vibe with a lot of the people like in the class. It was kind of crazy, and like especially at like a PWI, like, you know, UVA, like I don't know, it was just really interesting. Like you know, people would be competing to go to like BlackRock or like McKinsey or Deloitte, and it was like it just didn't really seem like an environment that I felt like you know, like I could get what I wanted out of like my education. So
fair.
I took a few classes like in the arts, like in the arts department, realized that I really liked it, and I really loved like my classmates too. Granted, like I think like half of like my first semester taking like studio classes like went online, but still it was like, it was great. Like my over COVID, like, because all of my family is back in Namibia still. I mean, like my sister lived in New York. She was finishing art school at Pratt at the time, but during Thanksgiving, like my intro to painting professor like invited me over to like her house for like a Thanksgiving dinner.
That's
And it
so
was so
sweet.
it was like a space where I think I did find community, and yeah, it was awesome. And then in one of my classes, in one of my photography classes, actually I feel like I am like rambling a lot, but
No, you're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have like questions I'm writing down. From you.
Yeah.
but in one of my photography classes, because it's crazy, because I feel like ending up where I am, like a lot of it felt kind of like accidental almost, or like, you know, it was just like right place or right time. But one of my classmates, she had reached out to me like after the class had ended and was like, hey, like I'm working as like a co-director at this like new gallery and like studio space like in Charlottesville. It's called Visible Records. And they were like, you know, like we have this like paid intern program, like, you know, send this to like anyone like in the arts program. I sent it to people, but also I applied.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
Right.
okay, hey Kendall, you know, we're friends like that. Yeah, so I got it, and it was my first time, I think, like walking in like a gallery space and in like I think like a fine arts environment, because I think up until that point I still thought that I was gonna go into like marketing or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I honestly felt like there was a little bit more like purpose, like when it came to being even just like an artist intern. Like the space was new, but I think it did things in like such a radical way in terms of like it was very different than like the other environments that I'd been exposed to. Like, you know, I feel like I switched majors like so many times. It went from like business, you know, and then I tried to do like global sustainability. I actually I interned for the city of Charlottesville for their sustainability department, and like every Saturday I would go to the farmers market and like sort out trash.
Oh my
like,
god!
It was like so.
You're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, so you know, but I mean, it was nice. I think like realizing that I didn't want to do business, like I think got me a lot more involved in like community organizing, you know, going to UVA as well. Like there's a lot of like racial tensions, racial disparities. So it was nice to like Visible Records like is a very conscious like environment. So it was nice to be in a space that did do that. And then I did actually work for a podcast as like a graphic designer. Yeah, I was
I
never.
think you told me about that last year.
Yeah, I was never on it.
This
But
is a cute little full circle moment.
yeah,
Right here.
like I finally get to be behind the
Behind
mic.
it, yeah.
But it was called Still We Rise, and it was started by my friend Logan, who she wanted to tell stories about like Black history at UVA, because there's a lot of it, and there's a lot that I think like students like don't know about. And it was like I used to give like historical tours at UVA, and it was like so many of my friends who are of color and me, like we've gotten like yelled at by like tourists or like potential students for like talking about like race. I mean, like
That's crazy.
when you think of Charlottesville and like UVA, like
Yeah.
most POC like honestly like think of like the neo-Nazi rally, you know, and like you when you're there, like you have to talk about it. But I am like thankful that I was in an environment that I think like people weren't afraid to talk about it. And you know, like coming to Columbia and you know we're in this like Ivy League like setting. I was a little bit shocked at like how scared people were to like acknowledge race or like talk about race.
That's
you know?
that's very very real. I think I see it in two ways in terms of like being here, you know, like there's our like class, our program, and then there's like the institution as a whole. And I know in my experience it's been about finding the right people to talk about it with. Like if I'm in Yumi, you know, if we're in Yumi, you know, it's like, or even when you come in Yumi, it's like, oh, we know we can have an open conversation with pretty much anybody that walks into those doors. For those of you who don't know, Yumi is this like research institution in Teachers College that, you know, does research and all that stuff. So,
specifically for like minority education.
right, exactly. But yeah, it's like you have to find the right people, like versus like if we're in class, like if you say something, it's kind of like there's certain people that you know will speak up about it, like you or Mars, Sophie, you know, maybe totally name dropping right now, but it's like
docs that
right.
Mars' social security number
is
Hollering.
But yeah, aside from that, it's like it is as still a very like sensitive topic here, which I feel like I wasn't expecting that either.
Yeah, I mean, especially working in like the arts, like, you know, so much about the arts, I think, for me, and like why I enjoy it as like kind of a medium is because a lot of it is about representation. It's about cultivating community. It's about expression of ideas that you know, other like modes of expression like can't really give you. And you know, I think like coming into this program and like studying arts administration as like a discipline, I was like, oh, I forgot, like people love money, like, you know.
Right.
I was like, people don't behave. And it was crazy because like my boss at Visible Records and also like my painting professor and like advisor in college really did not want me to apply to arts admin programs.
Here
So
in
fair.
particular,
like
or just like in general?
in general, but
yeah,
like
that's
my
fair.
my old boss like despises Columbia, and like he used to teach at Cornell, so it's like kind of
Rivalry.
knows. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I don't
Barely.
think he liked Cornell, but like, I mean, it's just like,
Ithaca.
yeah, it is kind of crazy because it is like a lot of the people that I did work with, like a lot of them did or do work in like higher education. I feel like a lot of practicing artists like do that, but it's like, especially like if you're like an artist that you know, talks about like criticizing institutions or like have like a little bit more of like a socially conscious like practice.
I think
like,
arts administration is perfect to study then, if that's the case.
yeah, it just is. Like, I see what they mean, like what my painting professor and like my old boss like meant, because like it's easy to get, at least for like visual arts, like it's easy to get sucked into like this idea of like commercial galleries and sales, you know, like there's like there's a huge like capitalist like portion of it, you know, like auction houses, a secondary market, like it becomes a lot more like akin to
Less about the artist.
and more about like the commerce like portion. It brings me back to like my first 2 years in college, the business major.
That's so interesting, and I want to hear your opinion on this, because I feel like for performing arts, or at least I know like within me, like I feel like now this shift in the world, and I think I was talking about this in our contracts class earlier. Oh wait, you weren't there.
No.
Oh yeah, I was taking the exam.
He's taking an exam. But I feel like there's a big shift on the companies now, and it's less about the artist. And ever since I've gotten into arts administration, I've been like more pro dancer, like more pro, you know, like reviving the dancer's voice and the ability for them to like advocate for themselves, whether they're freelancing, you know, with just like some, you know, individual choreographer or whether or not, you know, they're contracted with a company. And so, yeah, I kind of see like it's kind of like the opposite. Like, if anything, I've been kind of like, these institutions suck, like they're taking advantage of dancers, like all that stuff. But I'm curious if you've like had any of like that same, I don't know, like inner experiences, you know, with being a violinist and, you know.
Honestly, I'm gonna say no. Like, from my point of view, it has always been that these organizations have always prioritized the content and the product of it over the artist itself. And I think that's because also, like, at least with music, it's always been very blatant that the product that the artist is like creating and how fast they're creating it is the goal of the organization over the actual artist itself. And I mean, we literally can take it back, at least from my earliest views of that. Like, you can take it back to the 70s. Heck, you can take it back to the 50s with recording artists and them constantly being exploited. Like, the fact that most of their income comes from touring, not from the album that they put out, the singles, the EPs that they put out. They might get some income from merch, but like, they have to build up the fan base first. So a lot of this effort and this time that they're putting into their art isn't going into them. The only thing that's going into them is the tour, and even then a huge cut of that goes right back into the company that they're with, at the label that they're signed with.
Right.
So for me, I've always seen it as like, they're not prioritizing the artist. They haven't prioritized the artist. And especially for like individual musicians, that's why there is like the unions, because what's happening to the recording artists is even worse for the actual musicians. So I feel like that's something I've always seen and kind of always been aware of, and now more so with like specifically like music education, and not valuing like teaching artists, but valuing the fact that, okay, we can ship you off to this school. We'll pay you just for this flat rate, but we're not going to pay for, you know, your transportation. We're not going to supply you with some kind of benefits. It's genuinely just, you can provide this service. You as an artist, you as a teacher, is just like a benefit. It's a bonus.
Yeah. I feel like, and this is why I made the comment of like, oh, this is why I think it's perfect to study arts administration, because I know, like, for me, again, like, I have learned so much. I said this in our contract class earlier too. Like, there is so much being gate kept. Yes,
Yes.
Right?
I feel like that's right.
Past tense.
Yeah, it's
Past
like, my friends and I were trying to figure out the
Gatekeep.
past tense of like streaked.
Like
a
streak in what way?
Like a
Like taking all
Snapchat
your
streak?
clothes and like going.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I feel like you can just say streaked.
Yeah.
It just feels wrong.
Stroke.
I have
anyway.
no idea. Anyway, back on
stroked.
topic.
Gate kept.
Gate kept. Yes, gate kept. Because I'm like, as artists, and as it relates to, like you said, like whether it's music, girl, need to go to bed. Music education. What? Music education.
You got
dance education. You know, education within visual arts. Like, there is so much that we need to know about the companies, about the galleries, the auction houses that we are wanting to, you know, sell our work to, produce work for, that we don't know. Like, there's so, like, and it just blows my mind, because I feel like, in some sense, like, these institutions might know that there's like so little knowledge out there for the people, you know, for the incoming artists that are trying to make a career out of themselves. And so it's easier to like exploit them. You know, it's easier to take advantage and be like, oh, well, like, you signed the contract, but we knew you didn't know how to read the contract. So like, you know, and it's just so messed up. But yeah, like I think that as an artist, when it comes to like arts administration, like, I truly think that there should be like a basic like level class, or just something within those like undergrad programs, or like even in primary school, like, even if it's like super simple, because obviously like kids, you know, there's only so much we can comprehend as a kid. Like, there's something that needs to at least like plant the seed within us to know, like, okay, these are things that I need to be on the lookout for once I get to like that secondary education, because these companies are crazy out here. Like,
it is like, I've spoken to a couple people who've either like done MBA program, not MBA, MFA programs, or would like teach at MFA programs, and like the one thing that they always say is that like they need to incorporate like a business like class or just like how to like support yourself financially as like a practicing artist. Like, you know, like we were looking at contracts like this year, and it was like, I mean, I've worked in like commercial gallery spaces, and I was like, I didn't even like know this stuff. I mean, and it's like I don't work in sales, so it's like like these contracts are like they're important if you are an artist and like this is your work like being sold.
And I just feel like, oh my god, I get so like riled up when it comes to like dance education in particular, just because like it ain't nothing new to the dance world for like, you know, companies to be taking advantage of dancers or like for low pay and all that stuff. Like that was why I wanted to talk about it in class, because I'm like, this is happening, you know, not just dancers, but musicians and artists, you know, all across the world. But I'm like, to tell someone that's majoring in their art, you know, in undergrad, to tell them, oh, you have to enroll in a separate school, you have to enroll in business, you know, and cross-register at the business school, or you have to add that minor, which in some cases, like in Colombia, you have to pay for those extra credit hours, rather just being like a lump sum. Like that's not making it accessible. And so I just feel like we're automatically like setting artists up for failure in a sense, which I think is so wrong, because I know I've like gone back and I've had conversations with past educators, and I've been like, you know, now that I have this knowledge, you know, being here, I'm like, hey, so
like, are you
now
talking
that
about
I
this?
know, right? I'm like, now that I know about this, like, what's your take? And they're like listing it out, like all of the issues that they're aware of, and I'm like, so why didn't you teach us this? You got a student body of 60 dancers in there, and you're
and
just
this
like,
is all knowledge
technique
that they benefit from.
Exactly. It's crazy.
And even the ones that are accessible, that, you know, talk about these things that like artists, especially if they're freelance artists, should know about, they're not well known enough that like even those who are aware of these issues know about them. And so it requires like the actual artists, the learning artists, the practicing artists to like go out on their own and find these resources. But if they don't realize that this is something they need to know while they're doing it, and they are in a situation where they're like, oh, this existed, why didn't I know about this before? Like it's kind of like an ongoing circle of failure,
because it's like a you don't know what you don't know,
literally.
Oh my
god,
god,
what am I gonna do, smell it in the air,
right? Be like, no, I know, because I need to negotiate.
Is that a contract?
Exactly.
Is that a contract?
Right. So I wanted to ask, this is like going back to when you first started talking about your experience. You mentioned how in Namibia, like, you know, the scene designated for artists was like typically for like white people, but then coming, you know, being in the States, like you found like this place, you know, in the arts community that was a little bit more accepting. And so I'm just curious, like, what was there any like inner like feelings within you of you know, never feeling like you were like it was capable for you to be an artist, or like curious if, you know, we were talking about this last semester, like would you ever succeed, would you ever be enough, you know, because your first experience with the art was just so like me them, you know, like was so other.
I'll never be enough. No, I'm kidding. This is where you guys say otherwise. No, I'm kidding.
Stops record. Just stops.
The screen goes black.
Pause in the play.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, all things like aside, yeah, it was pretty othering in Namibia. I mean, like, other than just like racial differences, I think that there was a lot of differences even in like thought, you know, like people don't think about the arts as like being sustainable. Like my sister has always wanted to be an artist, like since she was young, and that was like the route that she took. And like got like completely scrutinized by like everyone around her, like telling her that like she's not gonna make money, like you know, she's not gonna get into like any schools like abroad, like I don't know. And now she's like a practicing artist, and like
She
you know,
said,
Heck
"Let
yeah.
me show y'all."
yeah,
He's like, right, so I'm gonna do it anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
Thanks.
Which I
Thanks so
kind of feel
much.
like that's something everyone nowadays that wants to be an artist has to do. Like it's all about like proving to your community that like, no, I'm gonna make it. Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is like this is something I've been dealing with since moving up here. Like being a dancer and I can't speak for all dancers, but like, you know, how when I observe the dance scene in New York, I'm like, there is so much pride in saying I'm a dancer. Like,
Yeah.
I just feel like all the dancers that are here can just be like,
they're proud of themselves.
they're proud of it
Yeah.
because they know they're gonna make that check depending on what company that they're with. And like, yeah, when the Met is up the street, when the Coke Theater is up the street, when New York City Center, like the places that dancers strive to perform in, like that's in your neighborhood. Like shit, I would have a lot of pride in being a dancer too, you know. But
Yeah.
I feel like when you're from not in New York, or I can only speak for Texas or Houston, I guess. Like it just felt so much like, oh my God, like I want to be a dancer, but at the same time, everybody's in my ear like, have a backup. You need to have a backup.
Yeah.
But they're not even thinking about like arts administration because hell, I didn't even know about arts administration. But like,
Yeah.
they're like, go to business school, go to,
Yeah.
are you majoring in science in the background?
Yeah,
Like, just
pre-med,
like,
pre-law,
right, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's so discouraging. And so like, you know, having that like fight of just like, okay, I want to be an artist for me, but also like to prove to everyone back at home that like this is something that, you know, is sustainable, like can be
Yeah.
sustainable depending on, you know, how
Yeah.
you finesse.
I was
That's
like,
how you work it.
yeah. I was talking to my therapist about this, where I was like, objectively, like I do want to work, I think, like for myself. I, you know, like I want to make myself proud. I want to like do things to further myself. But like, yeah, like, you know, I'm going home like this December for the holidays, and like I don't know, like there is like a sense of pride where I'm like, yeah, I'm working in like the area that, you know, I'm passionate about, and like it's like I'm, you know, like I'm proud of like the stuff that I'm doing, and it's like I'm like in a way like showing like
Yeah.
the haters.
I think
like,
it's
yeah.
both. I think it's both. I
Yeah.
don't know. Morris, what do you think?
It's, I feel like it's a little different for like my track, because it's kind of been the opposite side of that, is like going into music education. It was more so of like a lot of people didn't see us as like artists because we're like, okay, well, you're a teacher, like you're just teaching it. But like depending on what level that you're, you know, teaching music at and what your discipline is, like unless you're maybe working at a high school level, if you're working, or even maybe even middle school, but like if you're predominantly working as like a elementary school teacher, a lot of them aren't viewed as practicing artists because of how general music education is at the elementary school level. So they're just kind of like, oh, you know, you're singing your little kiddie songs and doing your little dances, like that's nothing serious. And so like I even experienced in undergrad where when people found out that I like played an instrument and like had to audition on it to get into my program, they were like, oh wow, I had no idea you could do that. Like they didn't even realize I can read music.
You're like, I am an educator.
Education.
In order to be able to teach you, I have to know.
it. Like, and the amount
Oh
of
my
like
God.
no, genuinely, the amount of my friends that were like genuinely surprised by the fact that like, oh, I can read sheet
You
music.
can shred on the violin.
All right, not too much. But like when they found out I had a senior recital, they're all like, that's so cool, I had no idea you could do that. And I'm like, so what part of music education with the focus on violin performance,
Oh my God.
focus in
Did you
violin
not
performance
understand?
didn't click?
Yeah.
Critical
and like no
thinking
shade to them,
skills, like-
no shade to them, but it was just kind of like, yes, I am both an educator and an artist.
Yeah.
I have to be both to be the one. So it was interesting because it was a lot of like, oh, like I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that was a part of your identity as a teacher. But then also the caveat is like coming from a performing arts high school, being like, oh, it's a waste to go into music education rather than going into performance and just becoming like a teaching artist or whatever.
So it was going into performance like more praised, I guess, in the sense compared to someone that would be a music educator?
To an extent, yeah, because like that's where it's competitive, and the idea is that, you know, if you go into strictly performance and you make it, then you made it. Like you actually have the, you know, the grit to do it. But a lot of people also viewed music education as a cop-out of having to do performance.
I feel like that's in general with like arts education, you know, it's like, oh, if you didn't make it as an artist, then like you might as well teach, you know, like people sum up, you know, and say that that's the only thing that we're capable of doing as artists is just teaching.
Yeah.
That phrase of those who don't do teach.
I know. I hate
I
that.
think that's so.
I hate that.
Please excuse my French, but I think it's such bullshit.
It is. It is.
So awful.
It's so annoying.
Oh my God. No.
It's
Sorry.
like everybody teaches, everybody does the art, they do the work.
Yeah.
Especially when, like, for music education at most institutions, they're held to the same standard as performance majors, as well as the same standards as education majors. Music education is literally like a love child of both. So we have to take both sets of classes. Like, literally the amount of classes that I had was twice the amount of like most education majors and most performance majors the entire 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm doing twice of the work to do both.
But people don't even realize
But they're like,
it.
you're just a teacher.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you need knowledge of the craft.
Exactly.
Like,
And you have to be able to do it and do it well, that you can teach it.
Yeah. I really want to like break that idea that like the only thing artists are capable of is either practicing their art or being a teacher, because I'm just like, one, how insulting to like, like
there's so much more nuance.
there's
Like
so
to
much,
people,
yeah, there's
like,
so much more, and it's like, just because I've practiced like art like for majority of my life doesn't mean that I don't have other interests, and it doesn't mean that I'm not capable of exploring those other interests. Like here we are taking freaking law classes and accounting right now. Like
Please help.
like you know, and it's like even whether it's like challenging or not, like just the fact that we're still doing that, you know, like shows exactly those nuances that you were just speaking of. But it just feels so like, I feel like artists are already placed inside of a box, like being an artist. Like it's like the only thing you can do is dance, but then, or, you know, practice your art. But then, yeah, on the flip side is that it's like, oh, well, if you don't make it, then yeah, they're just the teacher. It's like people like talk shit about you either way.
Yeah, they just always have something to say.
Yeah.
Everybody else has
it's like
something
there's
to say.
no win.
there's also such a plethora of like careers within the art as well. Like
So many.
something that like I feel like my friends like don't even know. Like in visual arts, like you have researchers, catalogers, writers, publishers, like directors, like artist liaisons, like there's so like digital archivists, like there's so many different things. And like I remember I was listing out like these like careers and like possible jobs that I felt like I wanted to apply to, and they're like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean,
There's so much out there.
yeah, I feel like all we know is like consulting, doctor, lawyer. I mean, okay, maybe it's my limited scope, but like
No, but like to extent,
pretty
like no,
common,
that's
yeah.
pretty real, and like
Yeah.
yeah, especially being an artist. Like I said before, it's either like you do your art or you teach. But I posted on my Instagram, like jobs that you can work with a dance degree. I had so many listed under there, like including like PR, like being an accountant. You know, obviously like there are some things where you might have to do extra schooling, you know, take extra classes, but I feel like that's still like worth it in a sense.
Yeah.
And like people just write off artistic degrees immediately as like, you know, you can't do anything else. But it's like I want more education, I guess, to be given. You know, I want the conversation to open up, you know, way more. It needs to.
You know what I also hate? Like speaking of like the like if you can't do like teach, I hate going on like TikTok or Instagram and seeing like top 10 lowest paying like college degrees. And
Girl.
I'm like, I don't
put
even need to look
education
at
on
this. I don't need to slide. Like I know it's gonna be like odds.
But it's so funny because it's like, sorry, I know we need to wrap it up, but it's like any degree, realistically speaking, any degree that you get, if you don't put in the work to like,
Get there.
you know, get there. Oops, sorry, baby. To get there, I hit the mic, guys. To get there, you know, like then technically anyone can end up,
Yeah.
without a job, or I got this degree in business or architect, and I'm not making any money.
It is. I mean, I think with the thing with like arts too, because like there is so much like fear that's instilled in us, is like, I don't know. I think the way that I looked at it was like, okay, like there's all these different career paths that I could take, but like I'm passionate about this. Like, make your bed and like sleep in it. Like you kind of just have to like bite the bullet and be like, I'm passionate about this. Like I have to like get into it, and like, doesn't matter like what you studied. I mean, like I wrote my undergrad thesis on like colonial mining practices, and it's like, now I'm like doing, I mean, it still applies in like so many ways in terms of like how I view the world, but like your education doesn't really determine like the track in like which you want to do,
right?
Like,
No, real.
There was words that I had, but they've since left me, so I have nothing else to say.
okay, it's been such a long day.
I know it has. We're actually about to wrap things up. My computer died also, so anything you were typing, didn't see it.
It was just
perfect. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. Do you wanna?
Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Leo, for joining us and giving your super valuable insight.
Of course.
We love Leo.
Yeah, that's
I'm hollering.
literally what I was named after. Like, my dad is not serious. But have me back anytime.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
We definitely would love to have you again. You're such a joy. So thank you for being
I
here.
love you guys.
We love you.
But with that happy note being said, that's it for friends. That's it, friends.
That's it.
For
We'll see you guys
friends.
next.
Yeah.
We're going to
Good
bed
night.
after this, right?
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, guys. See you next time.
Love one another.
Love one another.
Yeah, Julie Chen from Big Brother says that at the end of every episode, which is why.
We love.
But that's the end.
Right.
Peace out, guys.
Bye.
Bye.